So I'm going to talk about the feedback loop and specifically what it is, how to use it, what it isn't, and first I'm going to talk about what you shouldn't do as a teacher. So what you shouldn't do as a teacher is plan, assess, and grade. So there should be more steps than that. You shouldn't just give the students a lesson, give them a worksheet, grade that worksheet, and move on. There needs to be more done by your part of the teacher so students understand the content. So effective teachers build feedback loops into their instruction by doing three things. First, they figure out what the students' learning needs are. So they look at what the students are doing, and then they go back and they use that information to move on. The second thing they use is they have a repertoire of teaching strategies. So if a student isn't getting something, they go back and they use other things in the utility belt to teach the students. They have more than one thing to use. And effective teachers also build time into their instruction to take action based on the information they're given. So after they look at what the students have done, they don't just move on. They build time into their curriculum, into their lessons to adapt to that. So this is the feedback loop. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each step of it one by one and explain what it is. So as you can see, there's like 5 steps. So I'm going to go through and tell you what to do and what not to do with each step. So the first thing is, this is what the average loop looks like. Teachers just skip the part where you loop back, look at what students have done, and move on from there. They just, like I said, they take that worksheet, they grade it, and move on, because honestly, it's just easier to do it that way. The first step is initial instruction. This is when you are teaching. This is you delivering content to students, and they're receiving the information. And they could be receiving the information passively or actively. The second step is student action. The student action is when they're actively taking a role and they're actively doing a worksheet, doing a writing assignment, anything where they are taking what they've learned from that information you've given them and are acting on it. The third step is teacher and student analysis. So teacher and student analysis is when the teacher now looks at what the students have done, that worksheet, that writing assignment, etc., and takes that and then uses it to reevaluate what the students have done. So the common thing people want to do is after that third step is just grade what they've done and moved on, or just reteach lessons they didn't get it. But what you need to do is figure out what the students' learning needs are in relation to the learning target. This is what you need to do. You need to figure out what the students don't get, and then you move on to the step 4. Step 4 is additional instruction or experience. So that's when you go back and you look at what the students have done, and then you either teach more, go back and teach that thing, what you did with that different thing in your utility belt, or you give the students revisions and then have them act on those revisions. But like I said, if you don't give time in your planning to do either of these things, then you're totally missing the point of the feedback loop. You're totally missing the idea of teaching your students what they need to know. And then after you do that, that's when you test your students. You don't test them before they understand the content. You test them after they understand the content, because then they'll get better grades, and you'll just be everyone will just be happier if you just use the feedback loop. So common errors that you need to use the feedback loop for are errors due to incomplete understanding, errors due to flaws in reasoning, or errors due to misconceptions. So I'm going to go through each one and explain what they are. So the first error, errors due to incomplete understanding. This is when students only have partial understanding, and that leads to them getting stuff wrong or misunderstanding content. So they only have half the cookie. They don't have the whole thing. So they can't do much with half of anything. So you need to give them, so that they only understand half of it, you need to give them the whole thing. So errors due to flaws in reasoning are, if you look at a math problem and they're constantly getting something wrong in the steps of that math problem, like this is a simple math problem, but if it was a more complex math problem, then they're making missteps. That's errors due to flaws in reasoning. And then errors due to misconceptions are when you have this idea of what you think is right is wrong, actually. So you think that the seasons change because where the sun is in relationship, or the earth is in relationship to the sun, when actually it's the tilt of the earth. That's a misconception. And you need to avoid reteaching when possible. You'll need to reteach when it's absolutely necessary, because reteaching can take a lot of time. So using the feedback loop will help you save time to know what you need to specifically go back and teach, not just reteach the entire lesson again. So in conclusion, if you use the feedback loop, you will reach your students, and your students will create this trust, and they will and they will understand the content more. So you need to use your feedback loop. Use the feedback loop. Everybody use the feedback loop.